Hello and welcome to the important conversation. Happy New Year, everyone. Today is January 1st, 2021. Today, I'm a Bijan. Today we have Arooj with us. He earned a bachelor's in business management and economics, and he'll be sharing some of his insight with us. Arooj, tell us, to what extent do you think there will be job loss due to automation in our lifetime?
Hey, what's up, Bijan? Thank you for having me on. It's a great honor to be on the important conversation. And this is a really interesting question about automation, job loss, and basically where the world is going. So I think that before I can answer that, just directly, I want to say that I personally believe that there will be a lot of automated tasks, but because of the increase of intellectual capital of humans, just as our economy grows, there will always be jobs for people. So right now, I would say I want to answer your question directly as well, which is like, to what extent will there be job loss like in the near term? I believe that coronavirus sort of showed us the global pandemic sort of showed us to what extent there will be job loss due to automation. So the people who are, let's say, out of a job right now, and all of the companies which hired more and more people, believe it or not, in the course of this pandemic, we get a really accurate picture of to what extent jobs will be lost. Now, I don't have the data offhand, but we know that basically for lower income families in America, a lot of the jobs characterized by manufacturing or like automated engineering tasks, obviously some of those people may have lost their jobs, and often the narrative focuses on this manufacturing industry. But I think what we have to realize, though, is that not a significant part of the U.S. economy is not just manufacturing. There are so many other businesses that I think is so important to contribute to this conversation, because, I don't know the statistic offhand, but I believe it's in the tune of 13% or something, about that characterizes the totality of manufacturing jobs in the USA. So often we find that a lot of the couching of this question happens in terms of manufacturing jobs, but that's just not the full economy, which is why I'm really optimistic about how automation will it's something to be really conscious of as a tool, but I think there will be a lot of exciting opportunities for people to be successful in the 21st century. And there's a great amount of people who I think will be excited to pursue business development in this new era. That's my initial answer to the question. That's how I see it. I'm very excited that we have all this technology available to us. But again, I really focus with my friends about what's your idea? What's the why? And then the automation, does it factor in or does it not factor in? That's what comes into play. So that's how I think about that initially.
I think that my understanding of it is pretty similar to what you're saying. Is that there's a lot of there are essentially that the majority of jobs will be shifted. The global economy will be shifted from retail, manual labor based jobs more and more knowledge work. And that is where the economy is going to grow. The reason that I made this YouTube channel and decided that this was a like a sort of like a public service, is because that my concern is that um, the displacement of jobs is going to become very quick, and those workers that get displaced will not be able to re-assimilate, or to rejoin the workforce, in a in a sustainable way. And you can kind of give your take on this perspective. Um, the examples I like to give, which are really easy to conceptualize, are two main industries, like retail and self-checkout. I'm sorry, retail and basically driving, driving-based jobs, and that would be, taxi drivers, long-haul semi-truck drivers. Those jobs would be replaced by, Tesla's self-driving. Amazon is also putting out their self-driving taxis very soon. That would, and that's about 4 to 5% of the United States workforce. When they lose their job, it is going to be very hard for them. They're not going to become programmers. Many of them are, in their late 40s or 50s. It would be very hard for those displaced drivers to find new work. And then the last thing before you respond is, Amazon Go is have you heard of Amazon Go, by the way?
Yeah. I've heard of the experiences that I've read are like that you can basically pick up an item and leave the store and it automatically charges you. So, and like many sensors, carts, they're all digitized. It's pretty like a fully digital experience. So very interesting.
Exactly. So there is a massive percentage, I don't have the exact figure offhand, but a massive percentage of jobs in the United States and in the world is retail work. With something like Amazon Go, and also just online jobs, online stores in general, that's just going to completely make those retail jobs obsolete. So once those workers get replaced, them re-assimilating is going to be a challenge. And the probability that all of them are going to find jobs quickly enough, I believe, is going to be very low. So what do you have to say about those displaced workers and that kind of job loss? Where do you think they're going to go once they lose their job?
Yeah. So in terms of net effects and like net benefit, I think over the long term, automation will be beneficial to society.
Mhm.
Now, regarding the displaced workers and the sort of the learning curve for getting people, financially stable again, and even in the midst of this coronavirus pandemic, we see that there's got to be new opportunities, and I don't believe that those opportunities will just come out of nowhere, like you stated, with just like learning new skills and whatnot. I believe that the government plays a big role in like local government, state government, national government plays a big role in reestablishing the economy. They have a big responsibility, whether you want to call it the techno elite, or whether you want to call it the government officials that are elected. They have a responsibility to either re-educate the workforce, and make them up to date with the latest and greatest technological advances, which will then benefit them and their families. So it's really something that has to be coming out of like strategic partnerships with the private sector, policy making that allows for the effects that you're talking about not to be so dismal, and like depressing. We want to live in a society where people are able to self-actualize, and the government plays a role in that. And I think the local and state governments have a responsibility to like define their own direction with regards to their constituents. So I really see that as being a very pressing issue of our time right now, where we cannot just sit back and be like, oh, everything like, you figure it out, you know? I believe that it's got to be like, people have to care, you know, like government officials, the techno elite, people have got to care. Otherwise, I don't see it playing out well for society at large. Because while automation is a good thing, local and state governments are going to have to get up to speed with the latest models of economic growth. And that's going to be a struggle, but very much possible if people care and are willing to work together, you know?
You hit on a bunch of really rich topics there, and I want to hone in on an analogy that I bring up in my article, that I titled "The Intro to the Important Conversation." I believe that you're 100% right, that the government plays an enormous role in smoothing this transition between pre and post technological singularity. And the question that I have for you is, first, let's start with this first question. Number one, I think that in terms of past this prologue, when it comes to how the global, like you said, local, state and federal and global governments, how they interact with their citizens and how they solve large-scale problems. And a great example for how they're handling large-scale problems is best exemplified in climate change. Now, a large percentage of basically the entire right wing of the United States doesn't even believe climate change is real. So with that analogy, I personally don't feel very optimistic that they're attuned to the issues of job loss due to automation, because they can't even handle something as simple as the measurable amount of carbon dioxide in the air. Forget about something as complex and abstract as artificial intelligence and the impact on the global economy. So since basically looking at how they handle climate change, do you feel optimistic and with their ability to understand and properly implement policy surrounding artificial intelligence and the impact in the economy?
Yeah, the reason I'm optimistic is because there is going to be business development branches of the local and state governments, whereas the national government and the media frenzy may not be conducive to those developments. Like, they may not be reporting it, but it's happening. I really think that there's great potential for growth on the state and local levels, and eventually the national government will see that playing out with all of the governors and local officials who say to themselves and their community that we're going to make this better for you. And not only the business development made possible by automation, working with the scholarly class and the wealthy class to be able to scale new businesses that are maybe even state owned or locally owned. It's going to be quite interesting, because I don't think people have really seen this play out, where there's a more involved democracy in terms of, look, we're going to help bolster our local economy by forging new connections with everyone doing business in this space. And that includes like strategic partnerships. That includes new policies that encourage people to work with others and conduct business in a way that's profitable. And that way, I don't think people will get left behind. Now, of course, we have to be cautiously optimistic, because there might be a class of people who are against the change, but I believe that due to the displacement, all of the negative effects, that they've got to be able to feel that and take action. And I'm pretty optimistic that they will be able to. It just might take some time. And, perseverance is also another factor here, because at least when it comes down to healthcare, food, and like education, there's a huge realm of businesses that could be created on with the help of the right government policies. So it's not about policing people, but more so facilitating their local and state growth, and also making sure that um, the society is continuing to progress, and people feel optimistic about the future. I think that's such a basic thing, but feeling optimistic about the future boils down to, do you see do you visualize that tomorrow is going to be better than today? And in order to do that, people have to have really concrete ideas about where they see their local community going, where they see their state going, and where they see the national government going. And obviously, if we get distracted by various points, like various media points, and a lot of the fear mongering that happens on the television, and a lot of news stations who are just promoting this same type of archetypes for politicians, I believe that those archetypes are going to change, and people are going to see their politics in a totally different light. I simply think that for young people, it's their responsibility to sort of integrate with this system and be the change you want to see in the world, right? Because if young people are so attuned to this, right, and they notice the trend, they notice that their own families, have a certain type of mindset, they grew up with a different one. The shift that needs to take place is simply a mental one, where where positive integration can take place without causing a bunch of chaos. And that's why I would say that over the long term, I'm pretty optimistic that these things will fall into place, and like governments will improve. It's just a matter of taking action, and persevering.
I think I would like you to speak more to the archetypes that are going to change. Can you elaborate on what that means?
Yeah, well, right now there's really a distrust in institutions, whether you want to call it institutional um, wealth, right? What, like firms, whether you call it institutional organizations that are very heavily political, and just various industries who are promoting profit, without any concern for like society, right? Namely, you've got many lobbyists and all of these different industries, that need to like integrate with, perhaps advise or give some guidance to make the place better, but they are unable to they ignore the political aspect. And I don't think that can continue to be the case, because if you're distrusting your institutions, well, you've got to put someone who you can trust in those positions. So it's just like a mental shift, a paradigm change that needs to take place. And that's why I'm so excited about like new ways of business management, new ways of developing ideas. And like I said, the partnerships that need to take place from the private sector and the public to basically bolster this type of growth. Um, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Obviously, it's not going to be um, done overnight. I think it'll be a trend where people are getting more and more involved with directly benefiting their community in ways, and choosing the right sectors like healthcare, food, education, and trying to leverage internet technology web-based technologies to sort of grow grow those avenues. So it'll be interesting to see. I'm excited to basically see what the future holds.
Yeah, I think so. So you personally have been I think you personally have been navigating this shift towards more knowledge work, towards uh, remote work, online business, and e-commerce. You and I have a long history of talking about that and collaborating a bit. And so, can you share about your personal experience with how basically how you're participating in this transition?
Yeah, so I think that it was really interesting to complete my degree in business management and economics because now I've got like a refined eye as to where industries move, and especially when it comes to innovation and technology, which was previously like a niche area for young people, and like, oh, it's cool, but now it has become like the very economic basis of our reality in a lot of ways. And why am I saying that? Because when the coronavirus pandemic hit, what are the businesses that stayed and prospered? You know, you have so many technology company and technology firms that are hiring, that are reporting more profits than they did when it wasn't the pandemic era. And this shift, which Professor Scott Galloway, he's a professor at NYU, he calls this the Great Dispersion, where um, all of the major technology companies and their network effects have basically become distributed more to the lower income and middle class families. And whereas um, people were not thinking so critically about technology before, the coronavirus pandemic sort of was a forcing function to shed light on the new economic power that the technology sector presents. Now, I'm not saying that, just like with manufacturing, I'm not saying that it's all about technology. I don't know the numbers, but you know, how much of the economy, the U.S. economy, is technology based? I don't know, but we just see that the growth of these sectors, when all else is lost, right? It's you're quarantining at home. What are the businesses that people rely on? And those scaled technologies, I believe, will continue to be dispersed, right? Because that's what this Professor Scott Galloway calls that, you know, these technological effects will continuously be dispersed at a more micro level, and then be able to be integrated into the society via many different types of software and hardware type of businesses, you know. So it's going to be interesting to see just how much of our lives depend on the technology. But as of right now, I mean, we see that over the course of the year 2020, it was a big part of it. You know, school transferring online, and it also unbundling so many services. Like people, I read one amazing writer, David Perel, he said not to go to college in the fall of this year. Instead, start a business, you know, get into businesses that you're passionate about, and then also write about it, learn how to write online so that you can share your ideas. So it's sort of like a decentralization as well as a dispersion that is taking place right now, with more and more people having to rely on their sovereign individuality, which is another concept borrowed from this book called The Sovereign Individual, published in 2000, about how Bitcoin and related financial technologies may be the splitting point for how technology entrepreneurs or technology businesses will become the most elite. And they basically say that the sovereign individual is somebody who essentially creates wealth and basically lives a life on as a sovereign, holding and having influence over the rest of society. And obviously, I believe that that type of mentality is good insofar as it actually contributes to the well-being of society, as well as people actually caring enough to like make it happen. Some people think that, the technocracy, like the techno elite will like take over the world. And I simply don't believe that's the case. I just think that they'll hold a great deal of influence, and there'll be a lot of conflict between them, between the techno elite and like the middle class. But it's been exaggerated. I do think that over the time, all of the effects that are beneficial will be integrated into the economy. It just takes the right amount of a knowledge-based services. And like what you're doing is amazing because it's giving people that knowledge about, this is how the world is changing. What are we going to do about it? So just to answer your question, I've been navigating it from that business management lens and like the economic lens. Like I'm seeing, okay, let's say that I have goods and I want to make a business out of it. Of course, I'm going to optimize that for online selling. But still, even if you sell online, you've got to ship it. So I don't think that traditional retail, whereas it has just become digitized. People might say that, oh, traditional retail is dead, but it's just become digitized. So the people who are still selling consumer goods that are of high quality can still like make the shift. It's just how fast are you going to make the shift? And do you have the knowledge, the resources to do so? And that's where I see like the important conversation coming into play, because we need these conversations. Like, how are we going to improve our world if like we're just like trying to profit off of miseducation? And that's why I think that I'm not pessimistic. Like all these like doom people say like the next decade you're going to get rocked. Like I've heard that. And I was like, well, what do you mean by that? What if you do what's needed, make those strategic partners, don't be aloof from society, know what's going on around you. Number two, contribute to, in some ways, whatever you can to policy making. And then thirdly, persevere to have a belief in yourself that you do see a concrete future that is better for you like tomorrow than it is today. Work towards that future. And I get a lot of inspiration from like that idea. Peter Thiel talks about a lot, is that you got to have a vision for your a concrete future that is better than today. Otherwise, it'll just be vague, caught up in the media, caught up in mimesis, which is like just duplicating what has already been done. So that's why in summary, like to answer your question, how am I navigating this? I just believe that there will be new businesses that will be developed, and the technological changes that are happening are going to continue and bring about new avenues of wealth creation in society. And it's our responsibility to do whatever we can to bolster new models so that people can benefit, while at the same time, making cool stuff, whether it's consumer goods, whether it's the three industries I mentioned prior, and just trying to make that shift really valuable for everyone.
Exactly. So, so your work with Volume USA. We'll have a link in the description about, with your YouTube channel, as well as a link to your website. So, well, first I want you to just say a bit about what Volume USA is and what you're trying to do with it, and I'm going to connect it back to what you were saying after you answer that.
Yeah, so Volume USA, I really thought about it as a company that focuses on holistic health, and also physiologically, like needs, like basic needs, right? So you think about homes, like shelter, water, food, clothing, and I really saw that the best industry for me to get into, and at least initially, is like the food and beverage area. I'm very excited about this as a sector because bringing back beauty to these products that you see on the shelf, in addition to providing like a holistic and functional health benefit. I think that the transition from like old health like information to the new sciences that have been constantly released about, for example, black seed oil, which was a flagship product for Volume, and other things that have been changing over the years, like even in clothing, you can track how like athleisure gym culture has like changed how people dress and act and how they think about their like the professional attire. Even that has changed. So I just think that these industries are really interesting, and they all tie back to just like that holistic type of health, where prioritizing your energy comes first, before you can focus on some of these higher level industries or higher level businesses. That health is something that is going to be fundamental to to making the best out of your life. So that's how I see what like the mission statement about Volume, to energize your thoughts, basically. When it comes to like the technology side of just delivering the products via e-commerce, I think the added convenience of getting it shipped to your door, like that's amazing. You don't have to like leave your house, and you're getting like these amazing products that you really enjoy, and like you built into a routine. I think that more and more we're going to see like just very, very well designed products take over the traditional like snacking and beverages that people are into. And I'm excited about the cultural aspect as well. As it's going to be new. It's going to be new, more exciting, and I think a lot faster deliveries too. So yeah, that's how I think about volumeusa.com.
Yeah, you looked at the world, you found a problem, which is just health. People are not as healthy as they could be, and you solved it by finding this great product, black seed oil, and really trying to get it out there to make it profitable. So that's a good model, I think, for what the global economy shift needs to be. And I think more vital to concentrate on than the global economy is actually the average individual's mindset and framework of that economy. So what that means is when the traditional model is you go to school, you get an education, and you get a job as an employee. That is the majority of the labor force. What I think needs to happen here, there's kind of two sides. The first side is the side I'm saying now, which is basically the free hand of the market, and then the other side is government. But in regards to the free hand of the market, what I think the educational system needs to be it's currently centered around the factory work, and the bells that we have are similar to the bells that would be, going off in the factory assembly lines. And that model, I don't think is going to be sustainable. So what I think education needs to become is a shift from the implied mission, which is you are going here to learn how to be an employee, versus you are coming here to learn how to be an entrepreneur. And it would be, and the reason it would be necessary is because it would be necessary because I think these large scale industries are just not going to be able to modify themselves and be as agile as as they could be in order to stay sustainable. So essentially, what that would mean is, you go to school to learn how to look at the world, find a problem, and solve that completely on your own, and fix and create value in whatever you see you can create value in. And so basically, one example sort of might be like the gig economy. There are people that work a job, maybe they have a business, and then they also have a gig like Uber and Lyft, and these other jobs that you can just kind of work on like a contract to contract basis. So that, Uber and Lyft, those really blew up and gave people a lot more freedom. Now there's issues with that because it's not as consistent. Some people need to be, they also don't have healthcare opportunities because you're technically a contractor, you're not an employee. So essentially what I'm trying to get at here is there's these two sides. The first side, as I described, is the free hand of the market is going to be the free hand of the market is going to be solving these problems, and then the other side is the government, intervening and providing help. So I think you and I are pretty aligned on the side of individuals need to be engaging in entrepreneurial activities. How do you think that the government can be supporting its citizens through this transition? And one example before you respond is Andrew Yang. And for those of you unfamiliar, he ran for the 2020 presidential election in the U.S. and he did not win, obviously, but he was an entrepreneur. He started a nonprofit called Venture for America, and that was going around sharing with people how to be entrepreneurial. So he's an interesting guy where he's hitting both sides. He's trying to support the free hand of the market, trying to support entrepreneurism, but then he's also going on the policy route by saying every citizen 18 and over should get $1,000 every month, and that's going to really supercharge the entrepreneurial individuals. So do you agree with that? Do you think that Andrew Yang's vision for having universal basic income in order to help stimulate entrepreneurism, do you think that is a good approach, or do you think there is a different policy approach that would be even better?
I think that Andrew Yang represents the type of excitement and optimism that I have about the future because, and shout out Yang Gang, because
Yang Gang.
I know that he's got quite a big of a following because of the innovation that he is applying to policymaking, a more personable approach to bolstering the economy, and like I said, managing the change, the shift to more independent, more small businesses, more entrepreneurial, technology-based or platform-based businesses. And I think that this trend will continue. I think that the policy making that Andrew Yang has proposed is interesting. I don't know if that's like the end all be all of how things are going to change, but I think what he proposed is that a step in the right direction. that this is an issue that people in politics need to take seriously because of how the whole structure of society is reframing itself for human-driven progress and technology. So human-driven like societal change has to come from the right principles, and like principles of basically business management economics become increasingly relevant because, okay, how is your business going to be structured? You know, how are different partners going to benefit from new initiatives that are started by either individuals or the government? You know, that's something really interesting to think about. How is capitalism, you know, going to be instantiated in new ways? Because I think that when people argue against capitalism, they're not actually arguing about it's what the belief is. They're arguing about how it's implemented and how it can foster potentially a very greedy society. And so in order to reverse that, you've got to focus on new models and innovating on that belief system to make it better. And Andrew Yang represents a new way of doing so. Similarly, you have the concept of starting with why. You touched on this just briefly, is like people are not going to buy what you're going to do. They're going to buy why you do it, you know? So that's a quote from Simon Sinek. He wrote a book about leadership. And I think there's so many interesting people who are elucidating this reality, you know, like you have professors releasing startup engineering courses, and that would never come from a professor, you know. Long ago, there was one that I was deeply influenced by, which was called Startup Engineering by I believe he was a professor at the time. His name is Balaji Srinivasan. And his course was like eye-opening about, okay, this is how you actually get into engineering for startups. Moreover, like you've got people who are basically unbundling communities. And this is another person on Twitter who I follow. His name is Greg Eisenberg, and he drops so many gems about how community is going to be key to the future of business development and growth. And so with all these trends moving towards that direction and being technologically enabled so that these ideas can spread, I think there's reason to be optimistic about the future. So that's why I would say that over the long term, I think that job loss due to automation, to bring it back to the first question, will be minimized by the initiatives taken by those individuals who see automation as a net gain for society, not a net loss. And then having the people that we elect to be in tune with that type of like psychology, right? Because you mentioned the psychology as well, which I think you should elaborate more on, is that the psychology of unlocking the why, you know, unlocking new whys for governance, like new whys, like new ways of basically making the infrastructure better, the healthcare better, the access to food better, the access to a quality education better, and all these different ways of thinking that I think that I really hope see the light of day. I think that as those people start scaling their ideas, it'll be a real challenge to just keep up the positive outlook on the future. And I think a lot of people are really right now, maybe they might be very depressed or, you know, dismissive, or maybe they just don't feel good about what's going to happen to them and their families. But I think I don't think the future is going to be a dark abyss, like many people are saying that it will be. I don't think so. I don't think the doom of all of society is gonna like just happen. I think there are a lot of people who have hope that it's gonna turn out for the better.
Mm. So you asked me to elaborate on that new mindset, and I think a really key. It's quite hard to communicate this for me. The absolute level, the level of absolute poverty in the world has been steadily decreasing over time. And what that means is more people are rich today than they ever were in human history. And there's also less violence um, in now at this moment than there was at any point in human history. Now, people, when they hear that, they'll say, "Oh, haven't you seen the news? Didn't you see just what was on yesterday? This and that happened." Yes, we have more information, and so we're maybe more sensitive and more able to actually understand what specifically is going on. But the the amount of resources we have now is just so much greater that it's it's just so much greater that the quality of life overall is just steadily increasing. So the example, one example is for the price of the cost of living going down is if you want to survive, so if you go out and live in the bush, in the wilderness, it is going to be very challenging. You're going to have to spend all of your time finding food, hunting, trying to, build a fire with some sticks and rocks. That's going to eat up your entire day, your entire life. And you're going to experience an extreme level of stress and anxiety. Your level of nutrition is going to be through the floor. So with the advent of agriculture, we had a lot more free time. We were able to use that free time to enjoy life more and create new things, have important conversations with each other, and develop philosophies and religions, and actually be able to enjoy life. So I think that I notice that people think I'm very negative when I bring up when I have these important conversations, and I'm actually unbelievable. I'm more optimistic than people think. The point is that it's just that we can have a magnificent, magical, technological heaven, but getting there is not going to be easy. There needs to be again, massive mind shift from, like, the global consciousness just needs to increase. You can't, if you want your life to be like, you just show up at your job, you do work, and then you like go home and that's the end of your day, that's it. I don't think that's going to work. I think, as we said, you have to take entrepreneurism into your own hands, because if you are let's say you're a truck driver, you're a taxi driver, one day you have a job, the next day your company buys, a bunch of Tesla semi trucks, and you're out of a job. If you're a retail worker, maybe Amazon, sets up a bunch of their Amazon Go industry. I mean, you don't even have to think about Amazon Go. Just Amazon in general has been causing retail, malls to be closing down because it's just more convenient to be using Amazon. So I am quite positive about the future, but that is only if there is an increase in consciousness about what is going on with automation and how these tools are being implemented. So here's a good example I bring up in my article, and you can tell me what you think about this. The first thing is, have you heard of the Luddites from Britain, about 200 years ago. You know the term Luddites? You ever hear that?
Yeah, I'm familiar.
Yeah. Can you give me like a couple like a sentence or two summary about what that is for those that might be unfamiliar?
Yeah. So what I know about it is simply like I don't know a lot. What I think I know is basically that the Luddites are a class of folks who are very anti-tech. So they really didn't see that there would be any benefit to advancing society technologically. And I didn't actually know that their origin was from Britain, where that term originated. So you probably can explain it a little better.
Yeah. It's funny. I learned that people. Well, okay. The origin of Luddites are a group of textile workers in the 1800s that um, suffered perhaps the first wave of job loss due to automation. And the catastrophe of that is the prologue of the 21st century with automation. So, what does that mean? There, so labor, the economy is generally split up into two different categories: manual labor and knowledge labor, I guess. So, intellectual work and mind work, or body work and mind work. So, what that means is when these individuals in Britain were working jobs developing textiles, they were making clothes, they suffered job loss due to the automation of textile manufacturing. So there were more assembly lines creating electromechanical motors, and those were creating textiles so much more efficiently than a person could. So they were able to fire 80, 90, 99% of the staff there. Now what happened was there was a rebellion by this group called the Luddites, which was a clandestine organization of individuals who essentially were disgruntled workers. Now what they did was they went on a 70-mile rampage, destroying these machines, destroying these factories, burning down these buildings, causing riots. Dozens and dozens of people were actually killed in this. Now, that needs to be front and center going into going into this 21st century here, because in the same way that there are these people losing their jobs because of their textile industry was transitioning, that is going to happen again. And the examples are clerical work with self-checkout. That you don't have to be abreast to the cutting edge machine learning news or science. All you have to do is go to Walmart, and you'll see that maybe 15, not even 15, just like 5-10 years ago, or even 2 or 3 years ago, there were not many self-checkout lanes, and maybe there's zero, and now there's at least in my town is 50% or more are self-checkout. So those are the textile workers of the 21st century. So what that means is that there's going to be another sort of neo-Luddites, I suppose, an era of neo-Luddites where people are losing their jobs again. And how we get through that part, that is the part I'm concerned about. Now, once we can manage that, how we manage it, I'm not quite sure. But getting through that is going to then lead us to kind of another issue, which is well, the best way to explain it is through this movie. Have you ever seen the movie WALL-E by chance?
Yeah, I've seen Wally.
Yeah, for those of you that haven't seen it, WALL-E is like it's kind of like this. It's this world where these people live on this like satellite, the spaceship, and they have everything they could possibly need. That's surplus resources. That is automation put in a way that the society is benefiting, where they're not starving, they're not suffering, they're they're not suffering because of their wanting. They actually end up on the other side, sort of like the Aldous Huxley's book, The Brave New World, where they're suffering because they have too much pleasure, and they kind of lost meaning in their life. And that kind of hits on the philosophical side of the important conversation. Once you can properly implement an automated infrastructure so that the kind of like the systems that need to run to keep society operational would run automatically, in the same way that your heart beats automatically. You don't have to think consciously to make your internal organs operate. They just go automatically. And that leaves you to, be concerned about other things. So you asked me to elaborate on the mindset shift. I think the mindset shift needs to be on what our values are. Our values need to be human-centered, not capital-centered. The goal isn't to make money. The goal is to create value for individuals to be able to enjoy existence and not constantly stress about just increasing their capital. So do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah. So I think this is really an important conversation because of, when you frame it that way, that I didn't even know that. It's extraordinary just how much perspective you can gain from the past. And I'm glad you shared that with us. Moreover, I think that like the people who think in terms of win-win, like they want to progress society and make money for themselves, while at the same time delivering some type of human value back to society without creating a toxic culture, like having a real intent to improve the state of affairs, and basically go through that psychological healing and shift in mindset to basically think in terms of, it's not me against the world. It's right now, it's very much possible for me to align myself with a community of people who are pursuing healthy partnerships and healthy policy making. And if we think like that, I think we'll be able to mitigate some of the negative effects, and educate ourselves about this, like this matter. Like there are so many things you said just now that I didn't know before. So I really do see this as an important conversation moving forward to like master this transition, So definitely, I think this was a great conversation, man.
Absolutely. Arooj, thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed this talk, and maybe I'll have you on again later this year. So thanks for being with us today.
Thank you so much, man.
All right, take care. Okay.